We're losing the light fast.
As a student filmmaker, you know, to come up with something brilliant, you can do it once every short film and you're happy with yourself. But as a feature filmmaker, all of a sudden, you have to be coming up with the stuff every moment of your film, or at least, you know, aspire to be coming up with that.
Can you show me that little move you do when you walk away?
Jonathan became involved. He was meeting with Revolution Studios regarding a lot of different projects. And he took a liking to the Tooth Fairy, and we met him and we thought he was great and he could elevate what we were trying to do to another level, and he came on board.
He doesn't want to do the slasher version of a horror movie. He wants to make Jaws, he wants to make Alien, the real classy horror films that become classics, you know, that really turn into the ones that you rent for slumber parties forever and ever.
Tooth Fairy?
It's just Mommy, honey. Go back to sleep.
I remember waking up the first morning of shooting, actually not even waking up because I wasn't able to sleep, but watching Close Encounters of the Third Kind and watching the camera move through the desert in the first scene and realizing that I actually had to come up with every shot of the movie. I don't know why it didn't hit me until then, and I really felt sort of out of in over my head. And that's when you have a crew like Glenn Rulin in terms of stunts, who really has done this before, and he says, John, trust me, this looks good, and you watch it, and as a director you can go, yeah, it can be even cooler if we move Chaney a little more to the left and bring the camera here, and you start to feed off their ideas and feel more comfortable as a professional. And so it was a huge transition to become a professional filmmaker, but at the same time having an experienced crew around you really makes that possible. If you put that little lantern on some...
When I talked to the director, Jonathan, first time, he was really much into that. Make it old-fashioned, try to do everything in the camera, play it very dark, and it's just a challenge to have this option, because right now a lot of movies, you know, have to look like glamour and you have to see everything. So it's nice to have this option to try to work in the dark side.
Dan, I think, is an expert at shooting the dark, and for this movie I was going for a realistically dark-looking movie, a movie that really felt dark as opposed to was light but night. And so Dan was an expert at understanding what's too dark and what's not too dark, and how far can we push a scene, and how to make a frame in such a way that you're searching through the darkness and just seeing little things in the dark.
So many times you see movies that are very kinetic and moving all over the place, and he has a very, very secure feeling of what his visual style is. And I think for someone that is a first-time feature director, you normally don't have that. So there's almost an artistry that's going into his work, and I think that's what sets it apart.
I didn't want it to be a campy genre slasher film. I wanted to try and move as far away from that as possible, even though there were a lot of ingredients in this movie to go that way.
And so what we, I think, really tried to do was to take some of the genre conventions you were expecting and twist them a little so that you would be surprised by the new stuff, but still get, you know, your $10 worth with the old stuff as well.
I think there's such an awareness with the Tooth Fairy. It's a classic fairy tale. Everyone knows about it, and I think everyone always thinks there's something interesting or dark about the origins of a lot of these fairy tales. So it just seemed like a great idea to take something that everyone recognizes and sort of turn it on its ear a little bit.
What I really wanted to do was to try and subvert some of those genre things, but at the same time give it kind of a punch.
Why not?
The studio wanted to make a PG-13 movie, so what that says is you're not going to have huge gory payoffs and bone-crackling sounds, but you need to really build suspense, and I think some of the most effective movies of the last year, The Others and The Ring, did that brilliantly. And so essentially we wanted to make a much more atmospheric film that moved, you know, where the shots were a little longer and slower than, you know, your normal sort of horror genre movie, but with, you know, that as much payoff as we were allowed to give in a PG-13 environment.
aquí tus trailers. Visita mi canal.
The concept of when you look on screen, what you see is shadows. Because in our movie, if you're in the dark, the Tooth Fairy can get you, and she can kill you. And to try and take everybody, in your own head, everybody has a different definition of what they consider dark and what they consider light. Granted, you could turn on a light, and yeah, it's light in the room, but at what point does a shadow become a shadow that the Tooth Fairy can hide in?
The Tooth Fairy is supposed to be a nice little fairy that puts money under your pillow, but in this movie, the Tooth Fairy is just a mean person. Well, not really a person, a creature.
Lee Cormie was a gift from movie Godland.
Lee was
audition after audition,
a lot of
audition.
Luck, because we knew we were gonna have to find someone out of Australia.
Lee was the biggest surprise, and it's so nice because when you're dealing with a child actor, you don't necessarily know what you're gonna get.
Caitlin says that when you grow up, you're not afraid of the dark anymore. Is that true?
He has this vulnerability and this sort of fragility that you can't direct someone to have, I don't think, especially someone at his age. And so he was kind of a natural for the part. He had that, and he was great working at his accent as much as possible. He's an Australian kid. He needed to be an American, and he's literally like an old man in a young boy's body.
He's remarkable on film. Oh my God, just this quality to him. He's just a natural. It just isn't surprising, He just, of course he is. He understands matter and antimatter at 9, and of course he's brilliant on camera, Of course he's not focusing at all before a take, and the camera goes on, and he's, better than all of us.
Emma usually focuses all the time, so you've got to be careful not to, annoy her when she's trying to focus. Stop Emma's a really nice person, and she's good to work with.
We were lucky enough to get her. She's from Buffy, and Greg Silverman introduced us, and she kind of has this vulnerability which the movie really needs, because at some point Cheney does become crazy and you need someone to identify with, and she's of course the most identifiable character because she is skeptical and doesn't believe the craziness, and the vulnerability she has helps you feel for her, even though we know there is a tooth fairy and everything should be believed.
Kyle?
Michael just lose a tooth?
Yes, his last one. But come on, Kyle, you don't still believe that, do you? I mean, we all grew up with it, but it was just a story to scare us.
Cheney Clay was a guy who had won the Jefferson Award in Chicago for a play he did. And when I met him, I kind of knew he was going to be Kyle, because I was looking for someone who was low-key and really believed that he was crazy but didn't sort of exude craziness, because then what happens is you've got a chaotic world around him and he is almost like this magnet that draws everything to him. So you watch him, and if he's believable and believes things, you'll believe the movie.
He's such a sweet soul, he's so earnest.
He's unbelievably talented. He just has this star quality about him.
There's a lot of confidence on screen, I think.
He's a great actor. I've told him that myself.
Kyle Walsh is very scared. He's scared of everything, mostly of the dark. So he has thousands of flashlights and lights in his room. It's everything. His whole apartment is designed so that there will never be any amount of darkness ever in his life. And goes back to his hometown basically to face his fear. So on one hand, he's really scared of a lot of things, and he ends up, I think, really being scared of the world in general. But he's strong enough to admit that at some point in time, you've got to face it. You've got to stand up to it. Stop! Take him out of there.
Please just do it.
Okay? 3 of us are leaving.
Michael, it'll be okay.
I got a car waiting downstairs.
Stop resisting. Stop resisting.
Don't let them put him in the dark. Michael was right. You have to believe me!
The music, the score is the one aspect of your movie that can really elevate your film, and so we were very lucky to get Brian Tyler, who's a young composer who's about, I don't know, 30 years old and has already done 25 films. And, you know, he could bring an element of class to the film to help us get to, you know, just sort of anything we could do to transcend the genre.
The goal, the challenge of this movie was to keep the story cohesive and make you feel emotionally for the characters that are running from this creature, but at the same time, you know, keep it scary as possible. With the music in the elevator sequence, it's in very strange meters, it's in very strange tempo shifts and time shifts, and just keeping that different and keeping it mixed up keeps the audiences on their toes when they're watching it. They don't know what to expect.
I'm still losing power! Great! We need to get out of here now!
When we started this movie, it was a much lower budget film, and so we always knew that to keep the production value high, we were going to need very sort of elaborate soundscaping and sound design. And so, you know, we were lucky enough that Gloria Borders, who works at Revolution Studios and had won the Oscar for sound design in Terminator 2, was willing to get us Randy Tom and Skywalker Sound to help with that sound design.
Damn it. Come on.
Y tus trailers, visita mi canal.
I remember that day when they said, you know, Stan Winston's going to do this. It's amazing, because 5 years before that I'm sitting there reading books in South Africa about Jurassic Park, seeing his name. He's just a name. And now I'm sitting down at a table with this man who is treating me as if I'm Steven Spielberg. He simply creates from your mythology so that things are really intrinsically tied in. The monster you see makes sense with the mythology of your film. And I think that is sort of one of his greatest talents, to create something that's simple but really scary and interesting. I'll be honest, I mean, when I first saw the creature in flesh, in silicone, I was like, you know, I was frightened, because I was like, oh no, now I have to bring Stan Winston's creature to life. That's impossible. And I remember jokingly he came up to me and he said, if you can't shoot this, you should retire. And I was like, oh God. And you know what? He does his stuff so well that when we just put the camera there, the thing worked. And I think he was joking with me because he knew it would. And so to find that out was relieving, but also a testament to the guy, because putting the camera in front of the thing, that's all I had to do. It worked from every angle. One thing I wanted to not do was make a campy movie, because I feel like I'm always let down when a film doesn't take itself seriously. I mean, it's fun to watch them, but my favorite movies are ones that take their worlds a little bit more seriously, and you get into the world and the characters believe the world, and so it doesn't throw you out.
pushing the boundaries of the genre apart. I think the first way of doing that is sort of having to understand it. And for me, the way of understanding it is not just professionally working in horror movies, but being a fan of them.
I'm a huge fan of old school horror, old school thrillers, suspense thrillers, eerie, supernatural, anything to do with, you know, ghosts or aliens or, you know, any of that.
There's definitely a visceral release of adrenaline that happens. I think it's also probably fun to go with someone, like if you're younger and you go with a girl and you can be the one that she can hold on to. I think there's a lot of that in it.
Is she gonna get me?
Yes.
You know, the one thing after this experience, feeling everything being in over your head and all that, is just, I think, a real credit to the producers, William and Jason, and the studio, to give someone like me a shot, you know, because maybe they knew what I was going to go through or maybe they didn't. But I think that's a really brave thing to give someone young a job. I know when I was hiring the people around me, I only wanted the most experience and the best, and I definitely was not that. And so, you know, you hope that they give people like yourself and better people than yourself the same chance.
Just remember, don't peek.